Welcome back, everyone, to the HeatWave Podcast, part of the Roundtable Sports Network. My name is Anthony Aguirre, joined for the first time in a while, taking care of things on the Philadelphia 76ers side, publisher for Roundtable Sports, Anthony Pasciolla. Anthony, how are we doing, my man?
I am doing great. It's been a busy couple weeks for the 76ers and the Eastern Conference as a whole. How about you, AA?
I mean, for the Heat most side, things have calmed down, obviously. Similar to you on your side, we're awaiting a big decision by a big name out there. But the Eastern Conference has just completely shaken up, man. I mean, first, the New York Knicks win a championship for the first time in 53 years. And the next thing you know, the whole league decides, you know what, we got to get it together. We gotta assemble together and make sure a Knicks championship doesn't happen for another 50 years, God willing. But let's talk more. Let's just recap what Philadelphia has done
Sure.
throughout free agency, which is, of course, you bring in Dean Wade, then you get Ariel Porty from the Knicks, you get Anthony Simons, and then the big one that happened, you get Jaylen Brown in a blockbuster trade in exchange for Paul George. AP, just take me through your mind that day. What happened? Your thoughts, and where do you think this puts the Sixers in the East?
Mike Gainsey deserves a huge round of applause for his first couple months as the president of basketball operations. I mean, unbelievable stuff. And I was at a loss for words. When I saw that notification come through about the Jaylen Brown trade, I was sitting on the couch and all of a sudden I stood up and ran to my computer and just started writing. That was the mindset there. But what a win for Philadelphia in my eyes. Yes, you give up 2 first-round picks, and one of them is potentially that valuable Clippers pick. It's very complicated from my understanding how that whole pick selection breaks down, but still a huge win for Philadelphia in my eyes. It puts them among the best in the Eastern Conference, along with your Miami Heat, in my opinion. But there are still some concerns, and I'm sure we'll get into those.
We absolutely will. And the Sixers, to me, are absolutely a big threat in the East, with or without LeBron James. Obviously, he's still on the
Mhm.
market. That that puts you that puts the Sixers in a completely new tier in terms of the East, because in the past, yes, as media, we have to respect Joel Embiid for what he's done, but at the same time, we understand the health issues are always a massive concern. But in the end, we always know that they're going to be around, competitive. And obviously, the whole Eastern Conference Finals, not making it since 2001, is still being talked about. But this absolutely puts them in tier one in the East. I mean, the
Mhm.
Sixers have everything. You got the ball handlers with Tyrese Maxey, even Brown now, and VJ, Joel, and then you got some outside shooters with Simons and Dean Wade. Some good defensive there as well. Ariel Porty is a center that I'm honestly high on. I just think he needs the right opportunity, so I really like what he brings, and that's another valuable backup center piece option. So I like what the Sixers have done. And obviously, if they get LeBron, that changes the whole dynamic. That puts them in a whole different tier in the East. Like, do you think, AP, that the Sixers where do you see them in the LeBron sweepstakes?
In my eyes, it's down to 3 teams. I think the 3 teams, despite what Shams is reporting, I think it's Golden State, Miami, Philadelphia. I think if he was going to Cleveland, he probably would have already done it by now. I don't understand this whole delay period if he's just going to end up back in Cleveland a third time. To me, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. So to me, it's Golden State, it's Miami, it's Philadelphia are the three top contenders. That's not coming from any sources or anything like that. Just my gut feeling.
From on my side, again, like AP, gut feeling to me is more so when we're talking strictly basketball and we talk about winning. To me, it's the Sixers and the Heat, because obviously with the Sixers, given Jaylen Brown, the addition of that is well more than enough star power for James to simply take a step back and just preserve his energy, preserve his body, and then playoff time, you can turn it up a notch. a similar thing for the Heat. I mean, he could for either team he can play point guard. He can play point guard for either team, and that is what helped him win a championship in 2020 with the Lakers. So I think putting him back in that role would be very beneficial for him and beneficial for whatever team he signs with. Golden State, in my opinion, is not a good not a good spot in terms of winning. I mean, you have the oldest roster, and last time you tried that old roster, Hall of Fame lineup in 2022 with the Lakers, well, we saw what happened. So I think if he were to go to the Bay, I think it'd be the exact same situation, in my opinion. But let's turn over to the Heat side of things. Obviously, the big news with everything, the Heat get Giannis, and involved in the trade, which honestly surprised me, was Bobby Portis. I'm very happy with that because that puts the Heat, they get a somewhat of a backup center option because right now there's no true backup center, but Bobby can play the five if he needs to. He can stretch the floor out. Tim Hardaway Jr., one of the best shooters in the league last season, a Six-Man of the Year finalist. So that's a very fun one. And he was raised in Miami. He graduated in Palmetto, so that's a fun reunion. And you re-sign Simone Fontecchio, you re-sign Andrew Wiggins, and you let go of Norman Powell. Honestly, that was one you can live with. AP, obviously from a Sixers standpoint, how big of a threat do you see the Heat in the East?
Very. I think that front court of Giannis and Bam will work mainly because of Eric Spoelstra. I think he will find a way to get both of these guys very involved and benefit, even though they do have conflicting play styles a bit, in my opinion, just from the sense of neither of them can really stretch the floor. I know Bam is working on that 3-point shot. Hopefully that's something that develops, hopefully as soon as next season. But I see them as a very big threat, especially defensively. In my eyes, in terms of comparing the 76ers and the Heat, if Joel Embiid is healthy, I don't think there's a player in the league that can slow him down, if I'm being completely transparent. Not Bam, not Giannis, no one on that Heat roster. But the big question is if Joel Embiid can stay healthy, right? So there's no guarantee there. If you just look at the two rosters, I think that's the Eastern Conference Finals matchup, in my opinion.
I wouldn't be too mad at that. I mean, both of these teams made pretty significant swings, and honestly, you're right. This should be the Eastern Conference Finals early matchup because both have all the star power. They have the supporting cast to do it, and even with or without LeBron, these two teams are just a big threat regardless. They both have shooting and defense. So I agree with you there. I mean, Bam did score 83, so I mean maybe the 3-point shooting is showing out a little bit better there. but no, I agree with you. Bam needs to be more on the outside if Giannis wants to operate better with enough space, and I think he'll provide that. He's been a pretty good threat from outside, especially last season. And yeah, like the Heat are top. They are one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, and we're like, I'm going to the Casey Center tomorrow to see Giannis and Bam and Bobby at the presser. Maybe Bam shows up, maybe from his Las Vegas, how do I say this? I don't know how to say it. We know what we're talking about. We know what we're talking about. But but no, the Heat are a big threat. And honestly, I understand giving up a young core for Giannis, given the recent injury history, could be a concern to some, but it's Giannis. You can live with it, and you'll die with the results because the Heat have been pressured to get a superstar for the last good 6 years. You missed out on KD a number of times. Kyrie, Bradley Beal, James Harden, Damian Lillard was honestly probably the most heartbreaking one. So to give up what the Heat needs to give up, I love it. I'm cool with it. Tyler, Kasparis, Jaime, Kalel, I'm good with all those, and I think those are voids that are easily filled. And the Heat still have 3 roster spots to fill, so they're not done yet. Bradley Beal is still available. Russell Westbrook is out there. LeBron James is out there. DeMar DeRozan could be another option. So there's many routes that he can go on this one. Meanwhile, the Sixers, I would think the Sixers roster is pretty much established, right?
Yeah, they're at 14. They're saving that last spot for LeBron right now, obviously. Mike Gainsey has even basically hinted at that or said that in an interview that he's saving that roster spot for LeBron. And then after that, you either look at another backup forward or potentially another backup center, because I'm not as high on Hook Porty or a Dembona as you might
Hmm.
be. I think Embiid played in, I believe, 38 or 39 games last season. I don't think you're going to find a lot of success rolling out a starting center and backup center lineup of Ariel Huck Porty and a Dembona for a good amount of the regular season. I would like to see them get somebody a little more established, maybe a Jonas Valanciunas. That would be a dream pickup of mine if we miss out on LeBron.
I think he's signing with the Euro team.
Oh, he did sign with the Euro team?
Either he signed or he is going to sign.
Okay.
So that, I mean, because trust me, if he was available, I'm pretty sure half the league would want him.
Agreed.
Every contender would love a Jonas Valanciunas. And
Mhm.
surprisingly, it didn't work out so good in Denver. That one was a bit surprising. I thought that would put them over the top again, but clearly it didn't. So that was a bit of a shocker. But let's talk about the rest of the Eastern Conference, AP.
Sure.
So much has happened throughout the East, and even a few teams on the rise, you could say. If you could talk about one team in the East that you think could be like a legitimate dark horse to even just simply go on a deep run in the playoffs, whether it's the Eastern Conference Finals or even the NBA Finals, who are you looking at?
Probably the Indiana Pacers.
Mm.
They were in the finals not long ago at all, and you're going to have a healthy Tyrese Halliburton, hopefully on day one of the regular season. And then you pick up Zubats. I know you miss out on the 5th overall pick as a result of that. That was a huge gamble that I didn't agree with at the time, and now especially don't agree with. But he's still a very talented center, and that's kind of what you were missing in a sense. You still have Nemhard, you still have Aaron Naismith. Like, the pieces are there for that team to still be a very competitive group, in my opinion. Who are you looking at though? Because I know we were talking a little bit before the show, and I know you have a couple teams in mind.
I got a couple teams, and it might be a bit wild to our viewers, and it's mainly because, well, for one, okay, the Charlotte Hornets. I have had their stock for a very long time. I've never sold on it, but I just believe, okay, yes, you trade LaMelo Ball, and that was a significant piece of your franchise, but you banked honestly on one of his most healthiest seasons, and that's very rare nowadays. And not everyone is Stephen Curry that can just bounce back and go on a dynasty run despite ankle issues. Not everyone can do that. So I like the fact that they were able to re-sign Kobe White. I thought he would get more money this free agency, so I'm surprised that he got 75 million. I thought he'd go for like the late 80 or even the early 90 mark, honestly. So I give credit there to Jeff Peterson and the front office staff. And then the trades that they made, getting guys like Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal for Miles Bridges, those guys are more of a 3 and D guys. Those guys provide you more front court depth, or even Grayson Allen can move to the 2 if you want him as well. And then getting Naz Reid, I mean, there's a reason this man was so beloved in the Timberwolves franchise. That a stretch 5, even a stretch 4, who can guard 1 through 5, moves like a guard, has the handles of a guard. That is honest. That's going to open up so much for the offense. And what you gave up is not going to hurt you in any bit. Yes, losing LaMelo was big, but they're going to be fine. I think, if anything, I think they could be top 6 in the East.
Yeah, I don't disagree. My concerns with Charlotte definitely come in terms of defense. Con Knipple, not a great defender. Kobe White, not a great defender. So I have some concerns there. I also have concerns about, downgrading in the sense of playmaking from LaMelo Ball to Kobe White as your starting point guard. Kobe White's not exactly the greatest playmaker. He's not the worst by any means, but LaMelo really did unlock that offense for Brandon Miller and Con Knipple last season. I think it's the biggest reason both of them shined.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have concerns about them keeping up their level of play with Kobe White as the primary playmaker rather than LaMelo. But I mean, only time will tell. I do think they can be competitive for sure and maybe battle outside of the play-in tournament.
Yeah, Kobe obviously has the scoring,
Mm-hmm.
and like you mentioned, the defense might not entirely be there, but I'm confident that he could develop as a playmaker. I mean, he's still very young, so
Yeah.
he's got more room to grow. And with Chicago, he wasn't really asked to be the playmaker. If
True.
anything, that was more of a Ayo Dosunmu's role, if you could say that. I mean, I can't entirely speak for what Chicago's been doing because they've been the same as the Heat, a bit mediocre over the last 4 to 5 years. But Kobe will have a more of a chance to be a more all around guard. And Brandon Miller, he's already good defensively. We know that for sure.
Mhm.
Concavable, I agree with you. That's a bit of a cone situation, if you might want to say that lightly. But I think you have enough pieces around him because Royce O'Neal is a good defender, very underrated. Grayson Allen, despite what you think of him, he shows some heart on that side
He's
of the.
scrappy. Yeah, he's scrappy.
I mean, he's a Duke product, so you gotta be scrappy if you're coming from Duke.
Oh yeah.
And I like the center rotation because you even without Nasri, you got Musa Diabate, Ryan Kalkbrenner, PJ Hall on a two-way deal. He showed some good signs throughout the season when he got chances. So I like all around what they've done. I know they acquired Dorian Finney-Smith for a minute, then they released him, and I'm honestly okay with that because injury history from last season with Houston. So maybe be more serviceable elsewhere. All around, I think the Hornets have one of the best and promising rosters in the East.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't know if it'll take another year or two maybe to
Mhm.
establish themselves a bit more. I think that could also be a possibility. I mean, Khan and Brandon Miller are your franchise cornerstones now that LaMelo's gone, and they're both still very young. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say
Also,
Charlotte's in a rush to contend.
I wouldn't say so either because obviously when you hear Jeff Peterson talk and even Charles Lee and everyone else in the front office, they talk about stability. They talk about a long term plan rather than just go all in right away. I mean, this is practically an OKC route. Get a bunch of picks,
Right.
young talent, bank on whatever you can. And again, I don't blame them for thinking that maybe LaMelo isn't a good long term plan just because of what you've already gotten with the health issues, and you could maybe say the unseriousness of his play style, depending on what you may think about it. Because in my opinion, I don't think Minnesota's gonna do so good. They've already got bench issues, so I don't think LaMelo makes up for all of that. So I think Charlotte all around has a very promising roster. And if they could sustain what they had throughout that second half of the year, where they just went crazy, then I think they'll have a better start and a much better finish in the East.
Yeah, we definitely disagree on Minnesota though. I view that trade as a win-win, honestly.
I
The
don't see
LaMelo
it.
Ball deal, assuming he stays healthy, it's the same concern you have with a Joel Embiid, with an Anthony Davis, fill in the blank. I mean, injury concerns are always going to be there with certain guys, but I think that backcourt is very promising with elite defenders in Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert. To me, there's a reason LeBron James is considering going there, because he sees the potential.
Where's the bench though?
Yeah, fair enough. The
like
depth is not
like
there.
that is
I do give
legitimately
you
my
that.
only my major concern
Okay,
with Minnesota
okay,
is
that
the
makes more
bench
sense.
because okay, you got Terrence off that. If you I don't know if they re-sign Bones Highland, but if they do, then okay, that's another one. But then where's the rest? Because those two are not really great in terms of defensively either.
Sure. Yeah, depth is a problem there. I think it's a problem with a lot of contenders in the West now, though. So I still think they could, with the exception of Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City has an infinite pool of
Yeah.
players. It's ridiculous. It's not even
Listen,
fair.
even in the G League, they got some guys down there, so they're nothing short of talent or depth.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, I
It's
want to
unbelievable.
get your thoughts on this, AP,
Sure.
because even though this is more so in the Heat's division, I think this has a chance to show some fight throughout the regular season. The Washington Wizards.
Mm.
So I know that might sound crazy to some, especially casuals, but okay, you re-sign Trey Young. You still get Anthony Davis. I don't think he's going to get traded. You draft AJ DeBansa out of BYU, and arguably the best prospect in this class. This class is very deep, by the way. And then, okay, Then you get DeAndre Ayton, and then as of late, Chris Middleton, a sign-in trade deal, a bunch of really good young pieces. Where do you see the Wizards right now? Because to me, that's probably the most interesting situation.
Yeah, I think they're a playoff team, in all honesty. That might, like you said, might sound crazy, but we've seen Trae Young lead a team to the Eastern Conference Finals, and that team had a whole lot less talent than this Wizards team does, in my opinion. Do I agree with him getting a max 4-year extension? No. That's a different conversation, though. He still is talented. He still
Mhm.
can lead an offense. I firmly believe that. And then you have AJ playing the small forward. You'll probably put Trey Johnson at the 2, maybe Keyshawn George at the 4. Is that what you would think?
I mean, in terms of a starting lineup,
Yes, yeah.
so I would go Trey obviously, and obviously Johnson, AJ, AD, Star. I'm
Yeah, I completely forgot Alex Sarr existed. I'm not gonna lie to you.
yeah. Mhm.
And then, I mean, they have good depth then in that case too. A lot of young pieces. I think it's a really intriguing team. Um, I think top 6 in the East personally. That would be my prediction for them if I had to guess right now.
Let's not forget they got Bob Carrington, Justin Champagne.
Bilal Coulibaly, Will Riley, like they have a lot of talented pieces in that locker room.
There is no excuse for the Wizards not to make a leap
Yes.
because along with the young pieces, they got the veterans to do it.
Mhm.
So that
Yeah,
would
it's a complete roster, in all honesty. It's just, can Trae Young kind of lead a team and be unselfish? And then can Anthony Davis stay healthy? I think those are the 2 biggest kind of question marks for Washington.
where do you see Boston? Obviously, that is the Sixers division, and
Sure.
understandably, most as far as I can tell from what the Celtics media are talking, they're not a big fan of the trade. And granted, Paul George has his own injury histories, but they
Mhm.
did get Mitchell Robinson. Although yes, another injury prone type of guy, but when on the court, and you can attest to this, AP, you've seen the Sixers Knicks matchups. He's a presence in that paint.
Yes. Yeah. Um, the East is really loaded at this point. Like,
Yeah.
last year, it felt like I was writing every time I would put the Eastern Conference in a story, I would say the weaker Eastern Conference or the subpar Eastern Conference, because it just felt like compared to the West, it was always talk about the Western Conference, how good these teams in the West are. And over the offseason, that's essentially flipped upside down. I think Paul George is going to fit seamlessly in Boston. Do I think it's a good return for Boston to give up an all NBA wing for a 36-year-old, 35-year-old on a bad contract? No. But I do think George will fit in really well there. His secondary scoring, he's a very good defender still. He's a veteran leader. And then you still have Peyton Pritchard, Derek White, obviously Jason Tatum, Neemias Queta. It's a really strong roster as well. I do think that's probably a team that's going to be battling for that 6th seed alongside, Washington, alongside Charlotte, maybe. I think those are kind of the 3 teams that are going to be fighting out for that 5-6 seed slot, and someone's going to get unlucky and end up in the play-in tournament. But we've seen talented teams in the play-in tournament in the past, like the Sixers this past season. And I just think someone's going to get unlucky and end up in the play-in by 1 or 2 games. But Boston could absolutely fight for a guaranteed playoff spot.
What are your thoughts on the reports that Brad Stevens was not willing to give up Baylor Sherman and Hugo Gonzalez for Giannis?
I believe it. I think that's ridiculous, but I believe it. I
Oh
think
my gosh.
it's it's a great thing for if you're a Miami Heat fan, because that's probably the reason you ended up with Giannis. Because I think that probably was the difference between Milwaukee accepting Boston's offer compared to accepting Miami's, because Jaylen Brown was undoubtedly the most talented player on the table. And even if Milwaukee went out and flipped Jaylen Brown after next season, they boosted up his trade value even more, just handed him the keys and then sent him to a contender. I do think that's ridiculous, though, that was the difference, that you weren't willing to part ways with. No offense to Shireman or Hugo Gonzalez, but are you really the difference maker in a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade? In my opinion, the answer is no. I think you bite the bullet and you give up either one of those guys that Milwaukee would have been asking for.
If anything, that whole thing put them in a position to get to trade Jaylen Brown, honestly.
Yeah, because it destroyed the relationship. And I mean, the report said Jaylen Brown never requested a trade, which I'm sure is true if everybody's reporting it. But at the same time, that relationship was never going to be the same.
No, I agree with you there. Now, let's talk about a few other teams that could be on the fringe, but maybe not so much. Like the Cleveland Cavaliers situation, I'm just not sold on them anymore. Even okay, you still have yet to bring back James Harden. We'll see how that deal shapes up. But okay, it's practically the same core as last season, minus Dean Wade.
Yeah. I'm not convinced that's like anything special in Cleveland either. I mean, James Harden's only getting older. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley just like that just doesn't do anything for me unless Evan Mobley takes a real leap, which I just can't see happening in all honesty. And then, like you said, they lose Dean Wade. So they're not going to be bad by any means, but I'm not looking at this team as a top 3 to 4 seed in the Eastern Conference unless they get LeBron, which changes everything. But
they extended Donovan Mitchell on a big contract, so that's another future question you have to wonder what's gonna happen there. What about the Detroit Pistons? 60 wins this past season. They obviously led the Eastern Conference, nearly got dismantled by the Orlando Magic. But they're still one of the you could say a threat or on the rise. What are your thoughts on that situation in Detroit?
I think it all depends on Jalen Duren, where he ends up playing next season. I think if he remains in Detroit, then that's still a competitive team without him. It's like the Cavaliers. I'm not really sold on them, especially if they lose Duren to the Utah Jazz or wherever people are projecting him to end up, if not in Detroit. But I'm not sold on that team, especially without Duren. I mean, you have Cade Cunningham, who is an MVP level player, but outside of that, Asar Thompson is a defensive mastermind, but doesn't really give you much offensively. And you didn't go out and acquire a secondary scorer for Cade. That was, I think, their biggest need, and they didn't address that.
Yeah, so just for context for the viewers, the additions of the Detroit Pistons are John Collins, Gary Harris, Isaiah Joe, and Taurean Prince. Good, like catch and shoot guys, but like you mentioned, not a true secondary scorer. That's why when the Giannis trades were happening, I thought it made sense that Detroit would be a third team to take on Tyler Hero because he would provide that secondary scoring option. As a sixth man, I'm gonna emphasize that right now. As a sixth man, but I agree with you. They haven't addressed that yet, and that was what Jaden Ivey provided you. And obviously, he's no longer there. And they re-signed Javonte Green, Kevin Huerter, but like you mentioned, these are not secondary scoring options. So that's a great point that you mentioned. That no one filled that role.
Yeah, I thought maybe even Norm Powell could have been a guy they went after in free agency instead of John Collins, but they went the Collins route, which I don't think was a bad pickup by any means. I think he's a really solid player, just not what they needed as much.
I think the reports were that they were in the race for Norman Powell, but then ultimately he decided to go to Chicago, which you wonder why, because let's talk about Chicago. Let's get to what they've been doing. Okay, so obviously Powell, they signed him. They get Nick Claxton, which I forgot, by the way, so that was a bit shocking for me. They re-signed Zach Collins. Obviously they let go of Anthony Simons. They let go of Colin Sexton. Where do you see Chicago? Is it just the same story as it's been the last few years?
Yeah, probably just, welcome back to the play-in tournament. Chicago is kind of the vibe I'm getting, but they hit a home run on Caleb Wilson. That dude is a beast. I've been watching him in summer league and it is ridiculous. And his post-game interviews, like he has the mentality you want. I mean, it was the obvious choice at number 4. Don't get me wrong. It's not like they did anything impressive necessarily with their scouting, but they didn't mess it up, and that's what matters. I think he is going to be their franchise cornerstone, but welcome back to the play-in tournament. Chicago is basically my mindset on them.
I would just like to add, as the Miami Hurricanes beat writer, the U did beat UNC this past season. So I'm just gonna say, I mean, respectfully, Caleb, respectfully, but he's still like you mentioned, promising talent. Like and I love like you mentioned, the mindset. He's a dog. He's exactly what they need. Oh my! And let's move over to Brooklyn real quick because yes, they have not been good, but they're the moves that they're making it can be a bit interesting. All right, so they brought back Josh Minott and David Sharp. Then they added some veterans in Keon Ellis, Julius Randle, and Mo Wagner. We'll get to the Magic in a bit. Can the Nets even elevate to a playing spot? Because that's the vibe I'm getting, that they're trying to get to that level.
It depends if Michael Porter Jr. is still there. I know the Nets
Another
front
big
office
contract
is saying that they want to have those discussions with him about an extension, but I think if they don't come to terms on an extension, he's not going to be suiting up for Brooklyn next season, in my opinion. But if he's still there, that's a team that could compete for a playing spot. I would agree with you there. Especially, I haven't read too deeply into the whole new draft lottery system, but my understanding is you don't want to be the worst team in the NBA anymore. You kind of want to be that fringe, like 11 to 12 seed to really have the best odds at the number one pick. And I think Brooklyn is setting themselves up for success almost in that sense, which sounds weird to say that you're targeting the 11th to 12th seed, but I think that's what they're essentially doing.
I think they might have a chance to be in the race for that play-in spot, just because I've always said this: when you have a young core, you need veterans. I know the league sometimes tries to push it away, but we're seeing how much of a failure it can be when a young core has no veterans. Imagine if Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein never went to OKC. They might never be champions ever, and that whole core might be broken up by now. So that could be said right now with okay with everything with Brooklyn. So I think right now, I'm sorry, this guy right now, but but it's just an interesting situation with Brooklyn, and I think they're going to be in that race to take another leap. Same with the Wizards, same with the Hornets. They have a chance to make a leap with these veterans. And Mo Wagner, obviously up and down season with the Magic, and mainly because he was returning from injury. But before that, he was a sixth man of the year candidate. So that was a sign that I thought, okay, they're actually getting more serious about this.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, he definitely has the injury concerns like a lot of guys across the league do. I like the Julius Randle pickup more than most. I think him with the ball in his hands can be very effective. I mean, I don't understand the concept of having Michael Porter Jr. and Julius Randle on the same basketball court at the same time. Those are two probably the least playmaking players I can think of. They just shoot the ball at a high level and a high rate. So I don't really understand how that's going to work necessarily, but I do like the individual pickup of Randle for them.
I like because he had a better playoff performance individually.
Yeah.
So I think that there's some upside there because as we all have known, he's one of the notorious playoff droppers. But I'm sorry, guys. Getting on the show, Don Strouble, Orlando Magic beat writer for the Roundtable Sports. Don, how we doing?
Hey guys, how's it going? Sorry about my tardiness here. That's my bad.
You are good because you actually saved the bell on us right here because we're just gonna talk about the Magic. We were just getting there. But before that, we want to get what are your thoughts on the Eastern Conference? Because there's so much happening right now.
Yeah, so the East is in this weird spot. I think last season there was this, or last off season there was this idea that the East was wide open. You look at these devastating season-ending injuries to Tyrese Halliburton and Jason Tatum. We didn't know that the Knicks were going to be such a powerhouse yet. The Cavs were kind of this talented team, but hitting a ceiling. The Heat were in this weird limbo of not quite having that star especially after Jimmy Butler was traded, and it was all being put on Bam and Tyler. There was just a lot of different things. The Giannis drama, so many moving parts. AP can relate to this. Philly good, but you never know what was going to happen with Joel Embiid's health. Tyrese Maxey was a great player, but still young. That's not the case anymore. A lot of these teams are established now. A lot of these teams have an identity, and they've loaded up, especially during this offseason. I mean, the 76ers really look to be making a playoff, not just a playoff push, but a championship push. I'm sure that, after upsetting Boston, getting swept in the way that they did by the Knicks stung. And I mean, they're not messing around anymore. I mean, the Jaylen Brown trade was serious. And so I think that the East it's a tough landscape. I mean, you see what Miami did going and getting Giannis. I mean, I know that the Raptors, we'll see what happens with it, but they're trying to reunite with Kawhi. But quite a bit of legal trouble going on with that currently. But overall, I think that for the first time in a while, this has the chance to be the superior conference. And maybe that's not fair to say because we've seen the Knicks, an Eastern Conference team, just win the finals. But, there's always been this idea that the West is tougher. That's, where all the hardest landscapes in terms of the postseason reside. But I don't think that's the case anymore, guys. I think it's going to be in the East now.
Now, before we get to the Magic, Don, where
Yeah.
does LeBron go? Where do you think he goes? We know where your heart is at, but where do you think he goes?
It's hard to say. I mean, I know. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be Golden State. I think that was just a leverage move. That team's not even being listed in his top 3 anymore. I'm sure for the sake of our sites, Miami and Philly would be awesome. And for work reasons, I hope it's Miami because I'll make that drive. I don't care. But it's so hard to say because he's making such a spectacle of it. And I'm a lot older than you guys. So during the first decision in 2010, I was in 8th grade. And I remember this big buildup. And then just for it to go the way it did was so weird. And I don't think for the people of Cleveland, and I'm trying to speak objectively here, I think that if he doesn't choose the Cavs, it might not sting the same way, but this dragging it out and stuff, it just feels like, come on, man. I mean, it's about time, so we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you guys are pulling for either Heat or 76ers. And it's weird that, within this sphere of us writers and publishers, that 2 of those 3 teams are up for consideration, serious consideration. So, I think it's going to be an interesting summer.
I'm sure I can speak for AP. We both have stories ready. We have it ready.
Yeah,
we both have it ready just in case it goes down.
Yep, it's sitting in my drafts. Yep,
me too. Me too. Yep. Everything. I'm just missing some contract details from Shams, but we'll get to that when it happens. But Don, with the Magic, obviously this past season was a bit disappointing. The Magic had expectations. They were ranked top 3 in the East, only to finish where they were. And they showed some fight against Detroit in the playoffs, but then everything went downhill when Wagner went down again. What was your thoughts on the Magic season overall? Whether you thought it was the injuries, the lack of chemistry, the lack of a defensive identity, or even just not Jamal Mosley losing the locker room. Just what's your thoughts on the whole season?
Yeah, so before I started working with Shandell and you guys, I had been in the building here and there with another outlet during the 2024 season. And last year was really my first time being there all the time. And so I got to see firsthand this team at its highs and its lows. And I think that Jamal Mosley had gotten them to a point. that was good. He had built a good culture. He had built a defensive identity. But for whatever reason, injuries aside, I think the message had worn thin going into the year, because this was a team that still struggled offensively and its defense fell off a cliff. I mean, we were talking about a top 3 team in defensive rating over the last 2 seasons preceding this one, and then they fall out of the top 10. And so I think that a lot of that, yeah, injuries were catastrophic for this group again, but I think that there's more to it than that. I think that what Mosley had instilled, that was its ceiling, and he wasn't going to break the ceiling. And so it was time to move on. But I also, the injuries were a big thing, but I want to caution against being like Jeff Weltman, the president of basketball operations, who is like that is his number one excuse, just ad nauseum all the time, talking about injuries, injuries, injuries. And I think that it was the right thing to move off of Mosley, because my hot take before the season even ended was that there's a chance they keep him. I mean, that's just how this franchise operates. They are paralyzed by, not being aggressive. And I really think that if they win that playoff series against the Pistons, that he's still in the building at least for one more year. But I think they made the right choice here. It was definitely an underwhelming season. You got everything you could ask for from Desmond Bane, all 82 regular season games, played all through the postseason, took over as a number one option when he needed to. But just in general, a lot of roster flaws, just an awful bench. I mean, with the exception of Anthony Black, and, at times a couple other guys, just a really bad bench. And so I think this is a team that they're in a tough spot because they're trying not to get into the second apron. So they can't do too much. But yeah, it's even with the Sean Sweeney and a couple of the marginal moves, I think they're still a ways off.
Yeah, I wanted to get to the marginal moves. The Magic re-signed Javon Carter and Jonathan Isaac on a cheaper deal, even and then the Magic went out for agency. They signed Nikola Vucevic, reunion there, but they let go of Mo Wagner in the process. We were just talking about his move to Brooklyn. Just does the lack of aggression does that maybe deteriorate all championship hopes that the Magic briefly had?
Well, I don't think that they were really realistic to begin with. I mean, even last season, I think that this was a team that could have gone deeper than it did, but they're still very young. There's still just too many core flaws. And it was going to take more significant moves this offseason that realistically they just couldn't afford to make, unless they were willing to part with key guys. And this is just not a front office that deals in seismic transactions. The Desmond Bane trade was the largest move made in the Jeff Weltman era, and he's been at his position since 2017, right? And so there's no more draft capital left. Like, you don't have money, and so you're kind of in this situation where like the Vucevic signing, that was a steal, because he could have commanded a little bit more on the market. I don't know if he's quite a mid-level exception player anymore, but to sign for the minimum like that shows that he wanted to come back, and that was good on their end, because now they have a legitimate backup big that can space the floor, can go and get you a double-double on any given night. And that's a bench upgrade. That was a key need for this group. But to answer your question, man, like, bringing back Jonathan Isaac isn't going to push you closer to a championship. That was a bizarre move. Like, I don't understand what their affinity with this guy is. And he's, and that's no offense to the person. I'm just speaking plainly here. Like, he's not a productive player and he's always injured. And then Javon Carter, you bring back a good locker room presence, but you bring back a 6-foot sub 200-pound guard who can't generate looks for his teammates. He can't facilitate. And so you hope his 3-pointer drops. And if that's not dropping, you have an undersized guard who can't get into the paint and he's easy to push around. And so now what? And like maybe they're banking on another Anthony Black jump, getting ready for his extension, but we know from the injury history with this team, you can't put it all on one guy. So that's where they're at. Again, this is not a team that's close. I mean, maybe they get into the second round under year one Sean Sweeney, but like I said when I first hopped on here with you guys, things just got a lot harder in the East.
AP, any final thoughts on the Magic?
I think Don's spot on across the board. Honestly, I see them as a play-in team. If, in all honesty, I think they battle it out of the play-in. Maybe, like you said, second round's probably the ceiling.
Yeah, that might be it. I mean, I've always been high on Paolo. I still am, but as you guys mentioned, it can't just all be on one guy. Let's get to obviously the team that just won the NBA championship, the New York Knicks. First time in 53 years that they've won a championship. None of us were even alive, just to put that into context. Uh, but they re-signed Jose Alvarado, Jordan Clarkson, Mohamed Diawara, Landry Shamet. They signed Andre Drummond to replace Mitchell Robinson. Yes, he's older, and the injury history might still be a concern. I mean, AP, you could talk about that. He's been in Philly for the last couple of years, but still productive on the boards. So just to start with you, AP. Does the East run through New York?
No, I don't think so. I when is the last time we've seen a team win back-to-back championships? Was it the Heat?
Warriors.
Golden State go back-to-back? Was that 2017, 18?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that New York team does not resemble enough talent compared to that Golden State team, that Miami team in 12-13. I don't think they go back-to-back. I think Mitchell Robinson is a big loss, honestly. We were talking about him earlier in the show. Yes, he has his problems, sure, but he was dominant in the paint, really on both ends of the floor in my eyes. And they lose Ariel Hukporti as well, who you were talking about you're high on. So
yeah,
your backup center rotation really takes a hit. I've had firsthand watching Andre Drummond, and he is still a solid rebounder and really one of the better rebounders across the NBA in my eyes. But outside of that, he's not going to give you a ton. Yes, he's added a decent three-point shot to his offensive arsenal, and credit to him for adjusting his game to the modern era like that. But outside of those two things, he's not really going to offer you too much. And I think, yes, bringing back everyone, you're retaining Shamet, Clarkson, the other guys you mentioned is good. Don't get me wrong, but you can't become satisfied, especially with how Don was saying the Eastern Conference is not wide open anymore. The Pacers are coming back into the mix. The Celtics are still going to be a competitive team. The Heat and the Sixers are better than before. You can't become satisfied in this Eastern Conference. And I think the Knicks were largely satisfied with their roster, and I don't think they should have been.
Mm-hmm. And just to add some context, since 2019 with the Golden State and Raptors finals, we have not seen the reigning champion return to the NBA Finals. But Don, when you are ready, what are your thoughts on the Knicks, and do they still hold such a stronghold in the East?
Yeah, I'm with AP on this one. We just haven't seen that there hasn't been any dynastic runs by any teams in almost a decade now, and this is certainly not those Warriors teams. And I've said this to other colleagues outside of the roundtable space. I don't trust that James Dolan is the kind of owner that aggressively pursues another championship. I think that, everything that he was saying during the parade was just to, stroke the ego of the fans and, catch them in a moment where they were feeling good. But we're talking about, in my opinion, historically one of the worst, most meddling owners in the league. And he's finally backed off these last few years and let Leon Rose do his job in constructing this roster. And it worked out for them. And I don't want to say caught lightning in a bottle because this is a very talented team. I mean, Jalen Brunson's the real deal. When this team missed out on Donovan Mitchell a few years ago, they got the next best, even better guy. Like, this is a true alpha. But we also know that as a smaller guard, things can become troublesome for him. And we saw him almost go down with injuries in this past postseason run, seeing him limping off the court. And, luckily for him and the Knicks, he was able to stay in. But the point is, James Dolan clearly is not interested in a repeat. He doesn't want to be in the second apron. I mean, you lose Mitchell Robinson, who's incredibly valuable. Yeah, you bring back some guys like Jose Alvarado and, Jordan Clarkson, and that's good. But I mean, to AP's point, like Andre Drummond, this isn't the rebounding champion Andre Drummond of, 8 to 10 years ago or whatever. You're not getting Detroit Pistons Andre Drummond. And so, I think that because of Dolan's arrogance, especially now that he's got that ring, I just don't think that this is a team that repeat, let alone, especially now we talked about the strength of the Eastern Conference, gets back to that point. I think that it's going to be an absolute dogfight. I mean, Miami is clearly very serious again. Philly is very serious. Like, you've got all these teams, vying for these spots. And I don't know. This is a group that's one Jalen Brunson injury away from being a play-in team at best. I mean, he is their engine, and there's just not. I just don't see it. I don't see it happening. I think it was their year, and but there's not dynasty written anywhere in this team, because if you look at the Warriors from top to bottom, that was just A+ organization all the way through. And when you have an owner like Dolan, it's just you have it like you inflated that arrogance when you got that ring, and now he's going to do whatever's best for his wallet. And if the Knicks start to falter, he's going to be like, well, look at this one. I just that's how I foresee this going. So that's my thoughts on it. They're not the threat that they were.
I wouldn't say they're the threat, but I will respect the fact that they are the reigning champs. You got to pass through them. So especially when we talk, because all the teams that we cover are still contenders. They're still going to be competitive regardless of how the rosters are shaped up. So I'm not going to say they're a threat, but I think that they are still the team to go through because they just won the championship and they retain most of the core minus Mitchell Robinson. Our final team that we're going to talk about is a team that we could say is a bit in the hunt, but they still need that level A guy, the Atlanta Hawks. Obviously, losing Trae Young a while ago was, they moved on. They re-signed CJ McCollum to a 1-year deal. Same with Jock Landale. And they brought in Devin Carter and Aaron Wiggins in separate trades. They haven't let anyone go yet. Jonathan Kuminga is still in the open market. We'll see what happens in that area. But in my opinion, this was a landing spot that I had Jaylen Brown going before going to Philadelphia. I thought it was a good fit. I thought he'd be the D guy. Do you guys even see Atlanta being competitive with the way the East is shaping up? And I'll start with you, Don.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, and those guys, I mean, I think that this is a really good young backcourt. I think that Quinn Snyder is a good coach. Now, to the degree in which, I feel like Atlanta and Orlando are kind of in this similar sphere of like what their ceiling is right now. I do think that Orlando has a little more star power, because if you could truly unlock Paolo and Franz, then you're getting two elite top 10 level kind of guys at their best. I don't know if Atlanta has that, but Atlanta has a really good system. And I think that bringing in a guy like Aaron Wiggins from OKC and, having these different parts constructing this roster, CJ McCollum, a great vet. This was the only team that pushed the Knicks around in the playoffs last year. Literally the only one. I mean, they just it was after, they finally got it together, they just cruised to what, 17 straight wins through the, rest of the way. I mean, they would have swept the rest of the way if it wasn't for that Spurs win in the Garden. And so I think the Hawks have a good thing going here, but what's going to happen with some of its other ascending young talent? Is Zach Richache going to get it together and become the player that he's looked like in spurts? are they going to get certain things from role players that make a difference in the playoffs? Because I think I heard it on Richard Jefferson's podcast. He said, in the playoffs, especially in the championship, your bench needs to win you a game, your stars need to win you a game, and your coach needs to win you a game. And I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker could get this team a win in a postseason setting or in a high leverage game. Quinn Snyder's good enough. He's been there. What are the other guys going to do, though? And so I think Jaylen Brown really, really would have helped make things interesting. And because they didn't get him, they're not at the level of Philly. They're not at the level of Miami in their own division, so on and so forth. But I think they'll be interesting. I think they'll be solid.
AP?
Yeah, I mean, solid's a good way to put it in my eyes. With how loaded the East is, I do probably see them maybe battling for that 6th seed, but probably in the play-in tournament. I was going through my head when Don was talking, and I'm trying to think of another team that's going to have a guaranteed playoff spot that doesn't have a 1A player. And to me, Atlanta does not have a 1A player. Jalen Johnson is great. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is great, but they're not 1A guys. And I just don't think a team without a 1A player can have a guaranteed playoff spot and make serious noise in the postseason. I'm very big on needing an on-court star talent, and I just don't think they have that.
I agree with you guys. Jalen Johnson's great, but he's not to the level that they need him to be, at least not yet. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker, great year, balled out, but that's more of like a secondary scoring option. Like AP, we talked about how teams are missing that. Detroit's missing that. I mean, that'd be a good get if they wanted to, but obviously it's not gonna happen. So yeah, no, the East, guys, we're in for a crazy run this upcoming season. The East is just insane. Don, you and I are in a crazy situation with the Southeast Division because, like you mentioned, the Heat are up there. The Magic can still be competitive. Charlotte and Washington are definitely crazy. They're on the rise with the moves they made. Atlanta, I think Atlanta, in my opinion, is the bottom of the Southeast Division. And it's not even the shot. It's just the fact that Washington, I think, is going to be really, really good. Charlotte as well. Magic still have stars, and the Heat got Giannis. That's all I got to say about the Heat. So I think the Southeast Division is going to be a bloodbath to a certain degree, minus the Hawks.
Yeah.
Any final takes for you guys on the East?
I find the Wizards thing interesting. I find that interesting that you think that they'll be better. And that's not a shot at you. I think it's a little hot take territory. They're this weird team where it's like they've got this young talent, but have been tanking for years, and now they go and get really expensive stars and Trae Young and AD, and it's like, does AD even stay on the roster? There's so many unknowns with them right now that they could either finish second in the division or at the bottom, but we'll see. We'll see if it pans out.
I don't see why they would trade AD. I think they're very high on what he could still deliver, especially next to Alex Sarr and with AJ DeBanza. I think they got a good thing rolling, and I got them in like the play-in, but also like kind of close to that 6th spot. It's hot territory, but that's what we work for. We work for hot takes. We work for some elite clips. And we're not trying to get clipped with the whole 1A thing. We know that happened before with Jalen Brunson. We're not trying to do that. It's just more so, hey, the Hawks don't have a 1A guy. They just don't have one. But,
yeah, that's true.
AP, any final thoughts on the East?
Nah, man, not really. I mean, anybody who's a fan of an Eastern Conference team is in for a treat next season. That's what I'll say.
That will be all of today's episode of the HeatWave Podcast, a special edition with the Eastern Conference. Anthony Aguirre with Don Strouble and Anthony Pasciolla. Make sure to download the Roundtable app. It is free. Join our sites, and we provide everyday coverage, the best in the industry. Thank y'all very much, and we'll see you next time.